Well, welcome back to continue the discussion, Genesis chapter 45. Genesis 45 is one of the most emotionally charged and spiritually profound moments in the entire book. But beyond the tearful reunion, this chapter invites us to wrestle with some really deep and layered questions about forgiveness, about sovereignty, and about human agency in the story of redemption. One idea we didn't fully unpack in the deep dive is Joseph's theology of suffering. When he reveals himself to his brothers, Joseph doesn't lead with their guilt. He leads with God's purpose. In verse 5, he says, "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, for God sent me before you to preserve life." The Hebrew verb used here for sent is shalach, a word often used for prophetic missions or divine appointments. Joseph sees his betrayal not as a detour, but as a dispatch. He was sent into slavery, sent into Egypt by God, even though it was his brothers who acted. This dual agency, God working through human sin without endorsing it, is at the heart of biblical theology. This is echoed later in verse 8, "So when it was not you who sent me, but God." That's radical. Joseph reinterprets the worst moment of his life through the lens of divine orchestration. He doesn't minimize the evil done to him, but he reframes it with transcendent purpose. And that invites us to ask, how do I interpret the harm I've experienced? Do I only see the human agents, or am I willing, like Joseph, to imagine that God was weaving redemption through the threads of even my deepest wounds? Another angle worth discussing is the emotional language Joseph uses. 3 times in the chapter he weeps, labek, from the Hebrew root bek, meaning to cry or wail. This isn't quiet emotion, it's sobbing. And it challenges a cultural idea, both ancient and modern, that strength is silent. Joseph is second in command of Egypt, but he's not afraid to feel and to show those feelings in front of others, even the brothers who hurt him. His vulnerability doesn't weaken him, it completes his healing. And perhaps, even more than the words he says, the weeping is what truly breaks down his brother's defenses. Forgiveness isn't sterile, it's embodied. It's sweaty, tear-streaked, trembling mercy, and it's powerful. Let's talk for a moment about Judah. This moment isn't just about Joseph's growth, it's also about Judah's transformation. Back in chapter 37, it was Judah who proposed selling Joseph into slavery. Now, 2 decades later, Judah is the one who begged to take Benjamin's place in prison. That arc matters. In this chapter, when Joseph sees Judah's willingness to sacrifice, it signals to him that his brothers have changed. Redemption isn't just personal, it's communal. Healing happens when the community repents, not just when the victim forgives. Also worth noting is how this whole moment reflects larger biblical themes of exile and return. Joseph, once cast out, is now the one who invites his family in. He prepares a place for them in Goshen, a place of provision in the midst of famine. This foreshadows the future Exodus story. First, Israel is preserved in Egypt, and then later delivered from it. The biblical pattern is always exile, preservation, and then deliverance. We see it here first in Joseph's life. From a cultural perspective, Joseph's invitation to bring his father and the whole household to Egypt is both practical and symbolic. He's honoring the ancient value of family solidarity, which is mishpacha in Hebrew, ensuring the survival of the covenant line. And when Pharaoh gives his blessing to this plan, offering wagons, goods, and safety, he inadvertently becomes an agent of God's plan. Even a pagan king plays a role in the movement of salvation history. Finally, I think we need to reflect on this idea of reversal and irony. The brothers who once stripped Joseph of his robe now receive fine garments from his very hand. The very one they rejected becomes their provider. And in a poetic twist, Joseph's act of mercy becomes the turning point in their family's legacy. Grace often arrives in the very place where we least expect it, and that's the core of the gospel. So here's what I've been thinking. If Joseph can forgive that, what might God be asking me to release? And if Joseph can see God's hand in that, what moments in my story might I need to reinterpret through God's eyes, not just my own? Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it does mean letting go of, it does mean letting God narrate the ending instead of my pain doing that. And maybe, just maybe, our hardest chapters are the ones that bring others the most healing too. Well, thank you for sitting with me through this reflection. If something here stirred your heart, or if you saw something I didn't mention, I'd truly love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you take away from this chapter? What did you feel? This community is a space to wrestle and to reflect and to grow. And I'm just so grateful that we get to do it together. I'll see you in the next episode as the story unfolds even more. Thank you very much.